All right. Welcome, 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 everyone. It's so wonderful to have you all here. I see already tens and tens of people joining, so I'm going to give it another minute for everybody to navigate the way around me. Thank you so much for joining us in this lovely morning, mid-morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you're joining us from. I know we have folks all around the globe joining us today, so it's super exciting to have you all here. My name is Clara. I'm joined here together with our talk-based CEO, Tiffany, and we'll be hosting you and guiding you through today's conference. I hope everybody's doing wonderful. Please feel free to use the chat. There's also a lot of reactions and emojis you can send here, especially for our wonderful speakers to keep them, to keep them informed how they're doing in their talks. And yeah, let's get started. I also see the chat is up and running, so please let us know which country, which city you're joining us today from. When we were hosting our first Community Rebellion conference, we had folks from all around, anywhere from the West Coast of the United States all the way to India. So it was a wonderful crowd. So please let us know. And also don't forget to let us know if you were able to join us in Prague, if this is your first or your second Community Rebellion. All right, let's get started. I'm going to kick us off. We have some wonderful speakers waiting for you. So no time to waste. Again, welcome everyone to Community Rebellion Live. My name is Clara Lasserd. I am one of the co-founders here at Talkbase. We are the team hosting the conference here for you today, and we're so excited to bring you this format. It's such a delight to be able to host such an amazing group of people, so I really hope you have a wonderful time. I see folks are joining us from SF, from Indonesia, Colorado, London, Italy. That's absolutely amazing. Keep them coming. Keep using the chat. I'm going to walk you through everything that's going to happen today. All right. Well, welcome to the Rebellion. In case you joined our conference or have heard about the Rebellion before, you know that we have created quite a unique format of conference. We wanted to make sure that, first of all, we bring an in-person conference here in Europe where our HQ is, and bring speakers from all over the globe to make sure that our community industry gets the proper recognition and education in all different corners of the world. And why are we rebelling? Well, we do believe that community managers are often the rebels in their companies, and then they fight and sort of arm against the status quo. And that's our goal with this conference, to bring people together, to armor each other with great knowledge, and to keep pushing our industry forward. As always, you can share your experience from today's conference. When we had our conference in June, the hashtag Community Rebellion Conference was used almost 300 times on social networks. We had 300 different posts and pictures, over 10 videos created from the conference, 2 of which were actually created by folks who were not able to attend but still wanted to share the experience. It was absolutely wonderful. So please, again, if you want to follow the conference, use hashtag Community Rebellion Live, or just tag us at Talkbase, and we'll make sure to reshare your post and give you some support as well. All right, Tiffany, I would love to welcome you to the stage. Tell us a bit more about what happened in Prague and what we're bringing in today.
Alrighty, thank you, Clara, and hi everyone. My name is Tiffany Oda. If you don't know me, I'm based in San Francisco, and I'm the co-founder and COO at Talkbase. So Clara and I were reflecting, and I can't believe that it's already been 6 months since we took this photo. We had 140 community professionals from all around the world who flew together to Prague to come together to learn and connect with one another. And it was just such an amazing experience to see people who had worked in community for a long time meet other community people for the first time. It was that magical light bulb moment of, oh my God, you understand what I do, and you understand the struggles that I have. That's amazing. And it was really, truly just such a special event where I feel like everyone got to know one another, make new friends, which is, secretly part of the Talkbase Friends community MO. And I think it's safe to say that every person walked away with something from the conference. One other thing that I think was very special about the Community Rebellion Conference was that there were no barriers between speakers and attendees. I know sometimes when I go to conferences, I feel nervous or apprehensive about approaching a speaker, or maybe they're just too busy to have real conversations. And at Rebellion, we got to all connect. There were really no barriers, and the speakers intermingled with the attendees just like anyone else. And to that end, we are hoping to bring the same livelihood to Community Rebellion Live with our roundtables. So after the 2 sessions today, we'll be having our amazing speakers today, as well as our speakers from the Rebellion Conference in June in the roundtable conversations hosted by our amazing Rebel leaders after the 2 sessions. So be sure to come hang out, listen in, ask questions, and hopefully make some new friends. And who knows, maybe if we do another Rebellion conference, you'll already have some friends there. And then I also wanted to take a chance to call out our amazing speakers from the Rebellion Conference. I think there is an amazing breadth of knowledge and community experience, but even more was the heart and caring that these people had. They're true community experts with a passion for helping others and making connections. And you get to talk to a lot of them today. They're in the chat, so be sure to say hi, go to their roundtable sessions and make some connections and learn something new, hopefully. We did cover a lot at the conference, and we wanted to make sure we're providing that information. So we did a post-event survey, of course, as community people do, and you'll find that a lot of the sessions today and tomorrow are about those topics that people wanted to hear about. And so we're hoping to make our content really helpful, and you can walk away with something that you can take to your communities forward. And then lastly, wanted to give a huge shout out to Jenny Weigel. She was the MC at the Rebellion Conference. She has a smile that can light up a room and the kindness to go along with it. And she really just brought the pizzazz and welcoming charm throughout the conference. Unfortunately and fortunately, Jenny is traipsing around Europe, drinking wine, eating good food, and going to Disneyland. So we'll miss her today, but whenever you're watching the recording, Jenny, hi, and thank you so much. So with that, I will pass the baton back over to Clara.
Thank you so much, Tiff. It's so wonderful watching these pictures back, and it's actually also really fun. I was able to take my I'm a Rebel t-shirt today again, and I feel like with my people again, when you wear this on the street, people look at you very suspiciously because they're not really sure what this means. So I feel like I can wear this properly now, and it's the right attire for today. All right, let's dive into some of the couple information we wanted to share with you before we welcome our first speaker onto the stage. Something amazing happened at Rebellion, and it wasn't just at the start of Rebellion itself. Rebellion also sparked a great light and a lot of inspiration for our team at Talkbase. It really was a revolution for us in how we communicate what we do as a company, what's our mission, what's our vision. And we really wanted to make sure that what we do as a team and as an organization is really aligned with those values that we have talked about at our conference. And so after the conference, our team had a big brainstorming to think about the vision and what we bring to the market, not just from the Rebellion standpoint, but also as a company that's building the product for community teams. And what we've landed on is that our vision and what we truly believe here at Talkbase is that companies have the potential to create significant impact beyond their products through community. And our mission here at Talkbase is to power that impact. And over here at Talkbase, we're all community builders at heart. And what we're here to do is to really help measure why community matters. Thanks to every single speaker that joined us at the conference, thanks to our community advisors, a lot of our friends, and many of you in the audience today, we were able to run hundreds of user interviews over the last 6 months to really make sure that we solve the largest community challenges out there. And that's what brought us here today. Next week, we're very excited to announce that we're officially launching Talkbase Analytics. And we just really wanted to say thank you from the bottom of our heart. On behalf of our whole team, thank you so much for spending the time with us, for believing in us, for supporting us. We're so grateful and want to pay everyone in the industry back by keep organizing events that are truly built for you, that have a great atmosphere, connect everyone around the world. So again, thank you on behalf of the whole team. And of course, I already started talking about values. So let's look at the values that we had at our Community Rebellion conference that we bring with us here today as well. So let's dive in. Our shared values. Over here at Rebellion, we believe in radical kindness. We want to make sure that everyone here gets a huge tenderous applause, at least in the chat, at least with the emojis. We have great speakers. We have great speakers at our roundtables, and we also have some great roundtable leaders that are facilitating these conversations for their first time. So just as it was at our conference, we're bringing in folks with mixed depth of experience because we want to make sure everybody gets to try this out. We also have open and curious minds. We're really all here to learn, and there is a whole spectrum of different levels of experience here. So always make sure that you come into all the conversations, not just here in the chat, but in the roundtables with an open and curious mind. And of course, last but not least, our authenticity and connection. We sincerely hope that we were able to establish here today a space where everybody feels like they can truly be themselves and make some long-lasting connections. We want to make sure that you're able to talk to each other, that you're able to talk to our speakers. So that's what our roundtables are for. All right. Now that we have gone through our values, I am more than happy to introduce our speakers. So our two speakers for today are DeMario Bell, coming to us from Culture Amp, and Andy Claremont, coming to us from Glide. Our day one roundtable speakers are being led by Millie, Karina, Peter, Rach, and Jamie, and our roundtable facilitators, Anna, Daniel, Jocelyn, and Jan. Thank you so much for taking on the roles and helping us lead today's conversations. And with that said, I would love to pass the baton to our first speaker, DeMario. So I am going to just take a second here to show DeMario here to make sure that he is here with us. Hello, hello.
Hello, hi everybody.
All right, welcome, welcome. We're so excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I just want to say thank you for trusting me to be the first speaker today.
Of course. It's an honor. Well, with that said, we're going to let you take the stage. So feel free to start sharing your screen and let's dive in. For everybody who's going to want to ask DeMario any questions, feel free to keep them for the roundtables because that's when you can have an open conversation. All right, let's dive in.
All right, let's dive in. I hope that folks can now see my screen. All right, hello everybody, DeMario Bell here, he, him pronouns. Andy, I have taken all the pressure off of you, so I hope I set you up well. But today I'm going to be talking about how to build a thriving community. And I just so happen to manage one of our digital communities here at Culture Amp. And if you're not familiar with Culture Amp, we're an employee experience platform that helps organizations collect, understand, and take action on employee feedback. And so we work with over 7,500 global companies across the globe. And I lead our People Geeks community here. And so a little bit about myself is that I normally don't introduce myself about like what I do. I like to foster like deeper conversations. And so here at Culture Amp, within our Culture First community, one of our practices is to greet each other with belonging badges. And belonging badges are a way to create authentic conversation with one another, to have those conversations beyond the surface. And so today, the belonging badges that I'm bringing to this conversation are that I'm an optimist, I grew up low income, I'm an introvert. Yes, as a community manager and a community builder, I am an introvert. When I turn off this laptop, I am just like, don't want to hear nothing, be nothing, see nothing. I'm also religious. I identify as a Christian, which is very important to my identity and how I show up at work and my decision making. And I'm a proud first generation college grad as well. So those are my belonging badges that I'm showing up today. So my intentions are, I've done the welcome, so you know who I am. I'm going to talk a little bit about my community here at Culture Amp and myself. I'm going to share a case study with you, give you some key takeaways, and then we're going to do a close. Very formulaic. So let's dive right in to talk a little bit more about our community here at Culture Amp. And we call ourselves our community Culture First Community. So at Culture Amp, our community makes up over 100,000 HR practitioners, people leaders, and change agents who believe a better world of work is possible. Our community is product agnostic, so you don't have to be a customer to be a part of our community. If you believe in a better world of work is possible, we tell you to come on and jam out with us in our community. And we're so grateful that we're able to be a part of the everyday dialogue when we think about HR best practices, community building, and people being able to come together to edify one another. And so at Culture Amp, community happens in many spaces here. So we have our marquee event, which is our Culture First Global Annual Conference that we put on every year. We have an in-person invite only, and then we have a virtual event that's open to anyone. We have our Culture First Global chapters. We have over 100 chapters in 83 cities and 20 countries across the globe, 197 chapter leads, and over 10,000 members who are in our chapters program. That's a lot. And then we have our People Geek Slack community, which we have over, I'm going to give it away, it was part of the presentation. We have over 35,000 People Geeks in our People Geek Slack community who just hail all over the globe. And then I partner very closely with our social media team as well. And then community also happens with our on-demand thought leadership content. So we have our Culture First podcast. We have our not our weekly blogs, but we have our blogs that we publish out into the market. We have our weekly Geekly, which is our newsletter, and then our research that our people scientists push out into the market as well. And then we have our amazing regional marketing team who hosts Geek Ups, which are our version of meetups. We have webinars and workshops as well. And then our everyday campers, what we call ourselves here at Culture Amp, are everyday campers who are interacting, whether you're a prospect, you're a customer, you're a fan, no matter where you are, you found us at a conference, everyone is interacting with the community here at Culture Amp. And so the type of community we are a community of practice, and we really focus on acquisition and advocacy, so that top of the funnel. So how do we work closely with our colleagues who are in sales and other parts of marketing to making sure that we're increasing our brand awareness here at Culture Amp, and ultimately that's driving growth for the business as well. And in 2021, we won Advocacy and Acquisition Community of the Year. We're very proud of that and hoping we can bring another W home in 2024. So when I took over the community back in 2022, there were 18,000 members in our People Geek Slack community. And let me tell you this, it was my first time running a global community, and it was definitely my first time running a community of this scale. Not run other communities, but never run a digital community of this scale. And let me tell you this, it cut both ways. I was very excited about the opportunity, and then I was also a little intimidated by the opportunity as well, especially not coming from the HR world. And so, but I knew how to get people talking together. I knew that was my superpower, that I could get people talking together. And I know any other person who talks to me, who's a community builder, they'll say often, DeMario, we're trying to get to where you are. And I say, well, I definitely had some problems along the way. You know, while I inherited 18,000 folks, there were some things that I needed to, kind of clean up to make sure that we get our community in a place where it's engaging and it's thriving. So what were some of those problems that I encountered? When I joined, we had too many channels. We had over, I want to say 30 something public channels, which is a lot in a digital space. There was direct selling happening in the community. It was disorganized. So there was no rhyme or reason in terms of where folks should be engaging, how they should be engaging. We had no guidelines. And as community builders, we know guidelines are important. We need those guardrails so folks understand the culture in our community spaces. There was no formalized onboarding process. I mean, there were some pieces that were fragmented, but it wasn't cohesive. And then most importantly, there was just a lack of TLC. And this was no fault to the company. It was just that the community had organically grown so big, and they were like, oh, wow, we actually need to hire someone who can show this community some love. And that's where I've come in. So some of the things that I implemented were amazing, but I was certainly nervous about, like, where do I start? Because as we all know, as community builders, we're pulled in so many different directions. We have so many competing priorities. And so for me, I needed to better understand, like, what is my starting point, and making sure that that starting point, A, was a mixture of low-hanging fruits, but also those that had high impact as well. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about my approach to getting our community back on track, but also to going from just having a lot of noise in our community, but actually having a place where people want to come out and jam out with us. So the first thing that I did was I conducted a Slack audit, because again, one of those first things was we had too many channels. So for me, I wanted to better understand which of our channels are most engaged, and then which channels we should consider sunsetting. So we had over 38 public channels, and engagement was happening all over the place. And so for me, I needed to better understand, like, which dialogues are going to drive the most value. And so when I launched the survey, I got 66 responses from it. And my first key finding was that there were too many channels to navigate. Of course, that was one of my hypotheses. The onboarding experience is overwhelming. The naming conventions were not clear. There was a lot of noise in the community, and then engagement was all over the place. And this was key validation because I was able to really understand from the community what were those pain points for them, what was the friction getting them to engage in the community. And so these key findings really gave me a great starting point on how I could really begin to minimize some of that noise and then get them engaging in the community. And so some of the outcomes of that was that we went from 38 public channels to 5 default channels. And I'm saying default because these are the channels that our new members are automatically added into. And so yes, we got rid of some channels from the 38. We are down to 11, but here are the 5 that they're automatically added into, which are our community discussion. So this is where all conversations are happening in our community. And we like it that way because folks know this is the main place for support and to also collaborate with their peers. The second is announcements, which is where I push out information to our community members. Only I have access to that, just to make sure that when they see that notification from the announcements channel, they know that it's something pertinent for myself. Our introduce yourself, and then HR job board and diversity and inclusion. So those are the top 5 channels that we kept coming out of our Slack audit. The second thing that I done was conducted a community survey. There's a lot of text on this slide because I literally copied and pasted it from the briefing that I had to give to my leadership. So let me walk you through this information starting from your left. And so in H1 of 2022, so I joined at the tail end of H1 of 2022, we conducted a community survey. And the idea of this was to better understand what's going well in our community, where are opportunities, and what should we stop doing. And so what we had hoped to learn from this was to understand, A, is Slack the right place to have our community come together? We wanted to learn what we should continue doing, start doing, and stop doing. And then the third one was to get an idea of what type of programming we should prioritize. And so the methodology was that we sent a survey to 18,000 members. Well, in actuality, once you take off the folks who unsubscribe, it was kind of like it was half that list. So let's just say we sent it to like 10,000 members, and we got 300 responses from sending it out to those 10,000 members. So we sent it through Slack or Geekly and email. You can see some of the respondents on here in terms of distribution based on region, job level, and then also affiliation as well. And this survey really gave us a clear picture on what's really happening in the community. And so there were some main takeaways and some opportunities that I learned from our survey. And so some key findings were that our community members, they wanted virtual small group discussions and collaborations with one another. They wanted to be able to have channels that were broken out by HR function. Now, if you ask them if I actually delivered upon that, they'll tell you a different story. The third one is they wanted regional moderators to help foster engagement. So when we think about localization, when we think about representation, that comes into play. A content library, and then get control of the spamming that was happening in the community as well. So when I took a look at this and narrowed it down to these 5 key findings, these were things that I could action on and then build out a timeline on when we can start working on these. So here are some of the outcomes of that. So we are in the process of developing our ambassador program. And the reason why it's taken us over a year to get our ambassador program off the ground, and actually we haven't even started it, so I don't really want to say off the ground, but start an ambassador program was because there are other similar programs here, and we wanted to make sure that it wasn't duplicative and like what problem are we really solving. So we got really, really specific around like what is this ambassador program for our community. We've also revamped our onboarding process. I don't know why I put that as red, but I actually did do that. So let's just say that's green. So we did revamp our onboarding process. We've hosted virtual AMA and event series, and then we're working on removing the spam. I think that's just going to be an everyday, endeavor for us community builders, is removing that spam. So We also implemented a new member onboarding process. And so there's a 90-day onboarding process that our new members that they're a part of when they join our Slack community. So 5 minutes after they join, they get a warm welcome message from me that welcomes them into the community, that talks about our community guidelines, it familiarizes them with our channels, and then it gives them a first step, which is go introduce yourself in our Introduce Yourself channel. That's 5 minutes after they join. And big shout out to Common Room because this is how I'm able to automate this. The second is 14 days after they've joined our community, I want to know how could I have made their onboarding process 10% better. And we adopted that from Life Labs Learning with that 10% better piece. And what I love about collecting this informal feedback, because it removes this pressure from having to take another survey or et cetera, or feedback form. Our community members, they're very, very generous with their feedback in this type of a format. And I would say I've collected more feedback through this format than I probably would have through a survey. And then I like to celebrate our new members as well. So 30 days into our community, they get a message that say, hey, you've been here for 1 month, happy anniversary. And then they get a similar message 90 days into the community as well, celebrating them in this milestone. So here are some testimonials of that. So going to that 30-day celebration, I say they'll get a message from me, happy 1 month People Geekiversary. Can you believe it's been 1 month? Thank you for being a part of our community. And then here's some other testimonials when we think about the onboarding revamp. I've been a part of a lot of Slack communities, and I haven't seen a community onboarding better than yours. Great job. And then the other one here, which I absolutely love, is that pleasure being a part of it and really excited about the buzz that's happening here, much more than what I've previously experienced in Slack communities. And so I'm really grateful that our community was able to revamp processes to make it seem more like a community and less like a place with noise. And then here are some other testimonials as well. So how can we make that onboarding process 10% better? Here's that message. You can see the feedback that the community member shared with me. And then I also wanted to share I shared this other screenshot to your right, because what I love when you have community guidelines in place that become operationalized, you not only become the enforcer, and I don't want to say the enforcer, the steward of it, your community members become the stewards of it. And you can see here where someone posted it in the wrong channel, and one of my community members said, hey, this is actually the best place to post that. So I love that we've all embraced our community guidelines and we're holding each other accountable for that. So here were some of the improvements that we were able to make along the way. So too many channels, we checked that off the box. Direct selling, we're still working on that. Disorganized, we've solved for that. So we've gone from 38 public channels, now we're down to 11, only 5 you're added into. We have community guidelines now. I'm happy to share that for folks who want to see what those guidelines look like as well. We have an onboarding process, and then they have me, who's giving them all the tender love and care that they need. So at the core, we know that people want to belong. That's why they join communities. You know, if you've read David Spink's book, Business of Belonging, there's a chapter that talks about people join community for the utility and then they stay for the unity. And you see that represented here in some of the testimonials from our community members. I see a huge difference in the community since DeMario has joined. This community has helped me feel less alone and connect with the most wonderful people. I just love receiving messages like this. And if you don't already do this as a community builder, I encourage you to keep a gratitude or a sunshine folder that reminds you of your why. And that's why we keep these testimonials, because they remind us of our why. So this is where our People Geek Slack community stands today. So I just want to first say we're actually over 35,000 members, but I'm cleaning up the numbers in Common Room. So I pulled this right from Common Room, and so let me just share with you what Common Room spit out to me. So we have 25,581 total members in our community. We have a 25% engagement rate. And for folks who are asking DeMario, what does that engagement rate mean? That's folks who have posted, replied, and react. And so I want to encourage folks who are discounting lurkers or discounting folks who are reacting. We all learn differently. And people who are lurkers and people who only react are still finding value. And I know that to be true because 60 days of inactivity, I have an automated message that goes out to our members to ask, to say, haven't seen you post in our community in a while. What's going on? How are you doing? And they tell me, they say, DeMario, I'm still involved in the community. I still drive value. I still see value. I love the conversations that are happening. I'm just a lurker. And so I tell people, lurkers, they play a role in your community, whether you like it or not, because they will still go out and evangelize for your community. So that's what that 25% means. Of that, we have 6,000 members who are active in our community. Really proud of that number. And then to date, almost 100,000 activity that's happened in our community. And then when we look at it from a regional standpoint, we have, and there's some discrepancy with these numbers, but we have almost 3,000 members who are represented from our APAC community, about 4,000 from our EMEA region, and then over 10,000 who are from our America. So that's North America and Latin America as well. And then we have about 10,000 members who we don't have their location information. So that's going to be a project that I'll take on when things get quiet around Q1 of 2024. But really proud of where our community stands today. And I know that I'm getting close to time. So I just want to say this. Developing good software is just what we do here at Culture Amp. It just so happens to be what we do, but it's not why we do it. Building an enduring community is why we do what we do, because we know that our software alone is not going to help us achieve our goals. It's going to be the people that's going to help us achieve our goals. And our 5 core principles here keeps us tethered to how we're able to build an enduring community, fostering belonging and acceptance, being willing to reflect and grow, having the courage to be vulnerable, putting learning into action, connection inside, business outside. So how might we? How might you take this and apply it to your own organization? The first one is be community-led. Build your community with people, not for them. And I was listening to Scott Baldwin, who is another community builder who done a podcast over the weekend, loved it, and he quoted this, and this is actually from Get Together, How to Build a Community with Your People. When I joined Culture Amp, you notice that I didn't build my community for my members. I put a microscope to their hearts and to ask them, what's going to keep you coming back to our community? I want to make sure that you're getting value. So for anyone who is trying to reignite a community, start a community from scratch, leverage your super users and leverage your community. Always keep them at the center of your decision making. The second is identify your low-hanging fruit. So it could be a welcome message. It could be having frequent or regular engagement polls. Those are really, really great in a Slack community. You can host office hours. So every Friday, drop in for an hour, folks to come jam out with you. Thematic channels. You can also share relevant content as well. So if you're working at a B2B company, share some of your content with your community members. I'm sure that they'll love it. The third piece is identify your internal champions. And so one of the things I love about being here at Culture Amp is because we are a community-led organization. And I can say that, and I've been at other organizations where I've led community. And let me tell y'all, Culture Amp is doing it. Like, they are putting their money where their mouth is. And in that, lean into that. And I've learned to do that. So I've had to identify who are my internal champions. So I collaborate often across departments here at Culture Amp when I'm not in the community. I also have sought out proactive support and allies internally. I often go and present to teams or to the business. I'm doing that this week to show tangible impact that the community is having. I'm also going back to the company to share with them, here are our goals for community, and this is how they tie back up to our company goals here. I'm in the middle of 2024 planning. I know many of us are. And then I also tap into executive support as well. So leveraging my VPs and my chief executives here as well. I've gone to my chief people officer to say, hey, would you be interested in doing a webinar with our community? I've gone to our chief financial officer. So being able to bring folks closer into the community will help them see the value, and you'll get more buy-in when you need more resources. The fourth is iterate and incentivize. So we're often having to adapt to changing needs in a community. I just revamped our onboarding process in 2022. We're revamping it again for 2024. So what was in place in 2022 worked. In 2024, we have to 10x that. The other is leverage your super users. I said that before. Make sure that they have ownership in the community, they have accountability and leadership, because it'll make them feel more proud to be a part of the community. The third is experiment with new ideas. Just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Incentivize co-creation. So of course our community members, they love swag, but I look at it from a different standpoint. I think about it in the framework of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when you think about at the top of that pyramid is self-actualization, how can you make sure you're helping community members get to that very top, self-actualization, speaking opportunities, spotlights on social media, giving them exclusive access? How do you help elevate their brand? And then the other piece is measure and learn. If you're not measuring your impact, you're just going to be doing all sorts of things, a lot of activity. Measure your impact, and then be able to be willing to learn from that. And then meet other community builders. I want to say big shout out to Grace and Lattice. Big shout out to Stephanie from Salesforce, who I met at CMX. Shout out to Max as well. I mean, many people. I'm also a fan of Jenny Weigel. Connect with other community builders, because we're all trying to learn from one another at the end of the day. It's not a competition, it's support. And so one thing I've been intentional about is building my own support network. Who are those people I can tap into when I'm feeling blue? I was just texting Max Pete yesterday, was like, hey, can you help me, think about this? And so make sure that you're building your support network, exchange ideas with one another, problem solve together, so you don't have to do this alone. Encourage one another when those days feel a little bit lonely and those days feel a little bit hard. And I'm sure that will help you feel less alone as a community builder as you have these networks. And so my last piece of advice is you don't have to go it alone, and do not go it alone. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, reach out to me in my community. You know how to find me anywhere, but don't go this journey alone. Bring other folks along the journey with you so that you can 10x your community and make sure that it's thriving as well. So I'm so grateful. Thank you all so much. Clara and Tiffany, I'm going to kick it back over to you.
Oh, that was absolutely wonderful, DeMario. Thank you so much. The chat was on fire. There's so many things I wanted to share with you from the chat, from Brian sharing finally a proper onboarding experience warms my heart, to folks being so impressed with your engagement within the community. There were so many wonderful, amazing messages. So great job delivering your talk. And I want to give shout out to Millie as well, for shouting out everyone in our chat, and everyone for being so wonderful and so communicative. It's an absolutely wonderful crowd. So great work, DeMario. We are going to invite Andy to the stage, and we'll see you in our roundtables right after Andy's talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you. And now on to inviting Andy. So Andy, are you here with us today? All right. I see Andy's picture. We also know that Andy had some connection issues. So let's see if you can also turn on your camera so we can see you and hear you.
All right. Are we here?
Hello. All right. Welcome, Andy. So great to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing all right, aside from the internet troubles. So hopefully it works for the next 20 minutes.
We'll keep our fingers crossed. The stage is yours. We're so excited to hear from you.
All right. Thank you so much, Clara. And I got to say, DeMario has one of the most beautiful decks I've ever seen. So mine's not as pretty. So we'll just roll. So hey, everybody, my name's Andy. I lead community at Glide. We're a no-code development platform for business apps. You build apps without code. And we have this really nice active community across Discourse. We have a very active Slack community as well. And we got a bunch of folks that we interact with primarily on social. In terms of community platforms, this is a little bit of an obsession for me. If you've seen any talks I've done before or chatted with me in any of the community manager Slacks, you know that I'm fixated on community tools and platforms. And this obsession started way back. You figure early 2000s, I'm this teenager building gaming fan sites and forums, and I was just tinkering with all of these different bulletin board systems, all these message boards, PHPBB, vBulletin, UBB, Ultimate Bulletin Board, SMF, EasyBoard, MyBB. These are some of my favorites. There were many others. And if you, like me, were a nerd for doing this sort of stuff, you were spinning up web hosting and installing these things and playing with them just because you loved it. Through that, I learned about WordPress, learned about web development, started doing meetups. That led me to GoDaddy. I joined them in 2015, founding community manager for GoDaddy Pro. And at the time, we were onboarding into Lithium. I was kind of familiar with Lithium, but it was for business. It was for enterprise. And what surprised me when we were going through that initial setup period was that the back end of Lithium, once you got in there, wasn't all that different from the stuff we were playing with even 10 years earlier in PHPBB and vBulletin and these other platforms. So that was my start. That was my introduction to community platforms in a professional context. And then jump ahead another 7 years. I'm bouncing between teams in GoDaddy, and now I'm no longer a community manager. Now I'm a product manager, and I'm looking after Salesforce Community Cloud or Experience Cloud. At that point, we had migrated off of Lithium or Khoros. We had Bevy for events. We had WordPress for all of our blogs. These were all facets of community, because when we talked about the tools that we were using and the things that we were doing, it was all within that context of how are we connecting with our community members? How are we connecting with our customers? And it was really hard to see sometimes, where does the line between community and these other teams exist? Because it's all community in some aspect. But what wasn't the same for everything was the platforms and tools that we were using. The fact is, we had all of these different things in our tech stack that we had to use to create what we tried to make a fairly seamless experience for our community members. So what I want to cover over the next 10 minutes or so is, how do we navigate that world? How do we figure out how to create those experiences for our community members, for our customers, when we're bouncing around between all these different potential solutions in our tech stack? So from that journey, going from hobby to profession, there were three main things that I learned. The first one was, to my point, there's no single platform that does everything, right? Social media, blog posts, video content, podcasts, events. There are so many different things that we do when we're developing our community programs, and there's no single platform that will do absolutely everything. And the ones that try to do a ton don't necessarily do the best job of it. So what we end up having to do is pulling these different tools together to create a solution that fits our program and fits our needs. It's also very different when you're going from community as a hobby to community as a profession, and especially when you're working with community programs in an enterprise context. Now, when we're thinking about platforms, what we're actually thinking about are vendors. All of these platforms are potential vendors. And with that comes the added complexity and overhead. We have to deal with sales and procurement. We have to question and look into, how are the services delivered by the vendor? What's the support capacity of the vendor? And there's so much paperwork that we have to do in order to implement these platforms. And then on the community operations side, we have to shift our thinking a little bit, because now we're also thinking like product managers. And the reason I say that is, our community members, when they are interacting with these spaces that we create for them, they really are like users. They have jobs to be done, things that they're trying to get done. And as we're picking platforms, we have to think about, what are their needs? But it's not just them. It's the other stakeholders as well that we have to consider. So how do we take our community manager mindset and start thinking a little bit like a product manager when it comes to choosing our tools and platforms? This was a bit of a big shift for me at GoDaddy, because I had never thought about product, not really, not until I was basically told by my VP, everything that you're doing in community operations, getting these things to work, helping onboard team members, working with users, the documentation and processes, you're really acting like a product person. So let's think about what that means in the context of community. Well, the first step, whenever we go in and start thinking about what platform do we need, what tools do we need, is we start with the discovery. We have to start by gathering requirements. We don't want to look at any tool and platform until we do this. Now, if you're used to doing community work as a hobby, then this may be something that you were just inclined to do without thinking about it. You had an idea of what tools and platforms you wanted, and so you were just going out and seeing what was available. But when you're doing it within the context of a business, you need to be much more intentional about it. So going to each of these different groups, the different stakeholder groups, and identifying what are the must-haves, what are the nice-to-haves, and getting those down on paper, and then most importantly, aligning around what are the most important things that matter to each of these groups. What matters to you on the community team? You're going to be managing the platform, running it day to day. Your internal stakeholders, your colleagues, team members, the decision makers, management, the ones who are going to be putting their budget against it. What do they want? What do they need? And then our members, they're the ones that you're trying to serve. You're creating this for them. What are the things that they're looking for? I like to do this through one-on-one conversations. You can do surveys, you can poll, you can do all that. But I think one-on-one conversations are the best, in person or virtually, because you can tease out more detailed answers as you're going through that conversation. And the next step from that is turning those requirements into an actual plan. So I've shared this before in various groups, and it's a really nice way of just getting everything on one page. We start with the vision or the mission of the organization, your business. What's the purpose? Why do you exist? And then for your objective, what is the single North Star? The thing that the community exists for, from the business's perspective, what is it that you're trying to do? Right? And then what are the metrics, the actual measurable, achievable goals that are going to indicate progress towards that objective? Getting all of these things teased out through those discovery conversations, and you're putting them on paper. Once you have that defined, you know what your metrics are, what you're working towards. That's when you can start thinking about, well, what is it that we're going to do? What are we actually going to put together here? How are we going to do it? We get into the strategy and tactics. I want to give a shout out here to Brian, because I love this quote from him on Twitter. I think this is a couple years old. Yeah, there's the hand, the claps. Bottom line is that when you're going out and you're looking at vendors and platforms, the focus needs to be on the experience that you're creating for your members. It's not just about you. It's not just about the business. You need to hit on those things to get the investment. You need the commitment. But it needs to be about what experience you're creating for customers and for your community members. So if we go back to this one pager, we go back to this plan, we look at strategy and tactics. We can change the context on that a little bit. And we can think of it in terms of experiences and tools and platforms. What experiences are we going to create that allow us to hit the objectives we need to hit, or hit the goals we need to hit to serve the objective, to serve the mission of the organization, right? What experiences do we need to create? And then the tools and platforms, what do we need technically to implement this experience? All of this ladders up to that vision. I'm going to pause here for a second. With all of that determined, you have a solid understanding of why your business objective matters, what you're trying to do in terms of the community experience to serve it. Now you can start thinking about the tools and tech. All of that pre-work has to happen first. Otherwise, you're going to fall into this nasty habit. And I've seen it before, and I've done it myself, where there is a platform or a tool or something that you really like, and it looks amazing, and the marketing is great. You're very compelled. But does it do the things you need it to do to serve your community and the experience you want to create? That's why we do all that pre-work first. All right, but then as we start going out, getting ready to look for those tools and platforms, we get into the objective criteria. So what are the things that are absolute must-haves, non-negotiable? And you're going to have these, especially in larger organizations. Technical requirements. Do you need SSO? Do you need to make sure that customers are logging into your community platform with the same credentials they're using to log into the product, the app, the same credentials they use for other things? Do you need SSO? Is there an analytics stack that your company uses that your platform needs to integrate with? Are there other integrations that need to exist? Because there's a requirement from the business that any new tools and customer-facing platforms that you put in place, there has to be some sort of integration. Talk to engineering, talk to IT, figure out what those things are. Legal, same thing here. Compliance, regulatory compliance. It's very icky, but you need to do it. GDPR, SOC 2, Type 2 compliance, how you're handling data. When you're building out a community platform, you're collecting a lot of information on your members, potentially. How are you storing that information? Is it secure? Is the way you're doing it in line with your company's policies? What other regulations do you need to adhere to? Have those conversations with legal. Have those conversations in advance. Financial, budget. What's your short-term runway versus your long-term? How much money do you have to work with? And then what's the actual payment process? Some platforms that are used to dealing with enterprise, you might have a net 60, net 90 day on invoicing. Others may be, you know what, throw down a credit card and we can pay for it out of pocket. Figure out what your financial requirements are before you start looking at these vendors. And then lastly, do you have any procurement policies? Are there any conflicts of interest? Maybe there's platforms that conflict with platforms that you already have. So are there existing vendors that you're already working with where there might be a company policy to stick with those existing vendors of record rather than going out and looking at new ones to add to the list? This is really important right now because there's a lot of streamlining happening with budgets where teams are cutting back on their expenditures and looking to reduce the number of different subscriptions and tools that they're using. We're going through that at Glide as a startup. I know we were doing the same thing at GoDaddy several years ago. So it's kind of like true across the board, and more so now than ever, I think, when you look at the economic climate that we're in. Pause there. So this is all the hard stuff. So just Tiffany's point in the chat, this is the hard stuff. But these are the things that you have to deal with when you're in a larger organization and looking at evaluating different platforms. When you're in a smaller organization, these are still important things to consider. Glide, we're a small team. We're 50 people. We're a Series A startup. I'm still factoring in all these things when we look at different tools and platforms that we might bring in for our community programs, because these things matter. And the things that you do in a startup, those kind of set precedent for where you're going to be down the road. So start with the due diligence and do the right thing early on so you don't get into bad habits. So lesson I learned. All right. So now we know what we're looking for. We know the requirements, the criteria, all that hard work. Let's talk about the fun stuff. This is the thing I enjoy the most. So for finding potential tools, Google it. There are a ton of great platforms out there, and you can find them just by searching around. You can also hit the directories, browse those listings. G2, here's a snapshot from G2's dedicated category for online community management. G2, Trust Radius, Capterra. Look at communities that you like. See what platforms they're using. There's a service called BuiltWith. I think it's builtwith.com. You just drop in the community URL into that platform, and it will tell you exactly what they're running behind the scenes for that community. And then ask around. As DeMario said, if you look at all of the communities that exist for community professionals, there's a lot of great advice and a lot of knowledge in these groups. Go and talk to other people, see what they're using, and just start poking around. Next step, take them for a test drive. Go to those communities, sign up as a user, poke around, get a feel for it from a user's point of view. I have had very different reactions from looking at something from just looking at their marketing site and looking at the screenshots and all the wonderful language versus going into a community that actually uses the platform, signing up, signing in, and going around and seeing what that experience is like. Nothing makes up for that feeling of going in and using the platform yourself. Talk to fellow admins. If there's a platform that you're really impressed by, you're thinking about going with it, jump into those peer communities, talk to other admins. What do they like about the platform? What don't they like about the platform? What advice can they share? I did this with a bunch of folks when we were migrating from Khoros to Salesforce at GoDaddy. And I continue to have these conversations because I'm always looking at other platforms. It's just a great way to get some insight from people who have been there and done that. And then lastly, get a demo instance if you can. Digging into the back end, one of the things I love asking for and getting access to is the admin control panel. Because if you're going to be living in that dashboard for an extended period of time, you want to make sure that it's something that you're going to be comfortable with. So if you can, get those demo instances, get in there, ask for access, and see if you can build an MVP of what you want, right? If you can quickly get the scaffolding in place for a community experience, I think that's a really nice kind of parallel to what it'll be like to get started. You get a sense of what that user experience is going to be like on the back end. All right. So you found some platforms, maybe narrowed down to a list based on stuff that you've clicked around and checked out. You've talked to other people, gotten their feedback. It's time to run the numbers. At this point, you've probably reached out to sales. If not, you have hit the pricing page a few times. But that initial cost that you're going to see on those pricing pages is tip of the iceberg. You'll see like a monthly subscription cost, maybe, if it's not all gated behind talk to sales. And inside here, anything that is targeting a larger organization, you're probably going to have to go through sales and talk to someone first before they'll give you any pricing info. But when you're thinking about, well, what is this actually going to cost us? Think about what is it going to cost per month? What is it going to cost per year? What's the difference between that? What are the limitations on the licensing? You start reading into the fine print. Is there a cap on number of users, amount of activity, number of posts, that sort of thing? Get into the details. On implementation, ask about the setup cost. How much are they going to charge you for onboarding? What does that look like? And then the support and service retainer. How are those costs structured? What will they do? What won't they do? What are you responsible for versus what they're responsible for? Or will they refer you off to other partners? Different platforms have different approaches to this. Some may do blocks of support and service time. Like you pay X dollars for a monthly block of hours. Others may be, time and materials. Others may have no option. It's just go out and talk to our development partners. Figure this out all in advance. And then when you're running those total numbers, tally it all up. What I like doing is approximating. Is going to be this much on average per year. And I'll break that down to this much per average per month. And I always add a 20% buffer because there are always unexpected things that come up, whether it be things that were out of scope or just like other overages. Add that 20% buffer, give yourself a little bit of a padding. That breakdown is going to give you a realistic idea of what it's going to take financially to get this thing up and running. And as you're talking to sales, so if you're getting this information out of them, asking lots of questions, you want to keep poking and prying and following up. Go through those requirements. You can send them a list. These are all the things we need to know. Get them to follow up. Get them to do some of the work too as you're going through this process. Ask about the responsibilities. What are they going to be responsible for on the vendor side? What are you going to be responsible for during like the build and implementation? What are you going to be responsible for? Are there other teams that need to get involved? often you're going to have to pull engineering in, IT, if there's any integrations, DNS configuration, any sort of SSO stuff, you're going to have to get engineering involved. Map all that out. Ask them to give you a clear idea, an approximate roadmap of what are we going to do when we turn this thing on? What is the first 3-6 months going to look like? If they can clarify these things for you, and especially if they're willing to play ball with this sort of conversation, that's a really good sign. What I don't like seeing is sales putting up a wall and saying, we're not going to answer any questions until we have something signed, some sort of contract in place. That's a huge red flag to me. Because if you're going to find these things out after you've already signed off, you're going to be in for a world of hurt. And that's happened to me. It's happened to me a couple times. It's not great. Not a great experience. Don't avoid it. One of the things that I find helpful when you're mapping all of this out about who's going to do what is if you do something like this. So this is like a DAISY or RACI table. And it's about identifying ideally a specific name. Like who is the individual that's going to drive this project? Who's accountable? Who's consulted? Who's informed? Get these names filled in so there's a lot of clarity around who's doing what. If you don't have anything like this, as you're going through, you're also going to be trying to figure out like, oh, okay, who do we go for this? Who do we go for that? And if it's just a team, you still have that potential to just finger pointing within the team. Like, yeah, that's not our responsibility. Yeah, I know our team's name is on there, but we're not going to deal with that. It's not a priority for us. Have an individual's name on there. After all that, that work is done, that's when we get to the go, no go. When you're talking to sales, when you're going through all of the little line items, nothing is signed off yet. Nothing is concrete. This is still you just evaluating. When you get to the point of deciding go or no go, you're now negotiating internally. Really, you're trying to get the buy-in from your stakeholders and your decision makers, right? So all that pre-work you've done, here's all the work that we did for planning. Here's all the work that we did for evaluation. Summarize it, get it to your stakeholders and decision makers. And if you get a commitment from them, get it in writing. Have an email chain. Have something signed off. Don't just go ahead with a verbal. When you get the proposals coming through from the vendor, read everything in detail. Question anything you're unsure about. Redline it. If you're in a large organization, procurement is your friend. It took me years to understand that procurement is not an obstacle, it's an asset. If you are friends with the procurement team, they're going to be able to help you walk through this process. This is what they do. They can help you review all the contracts. They can help you go through all the details of that negotiation and that paperwork. Be friends with procurement. I've seen the difference in effectiveness between teams that make friends with procurement and teams that don't. So embrace them if you have them. And here's just a quick example of some of that heavy paperwork that you're going to be looking at when you're talking with a vendor. Master services agreement. If you're in a large organization, you probably have one of these defined already for all the vendors that you work with. You'll have some level of SLA, so what the vendor is responsible for. The actual proposal that they'll send over, what they say they will do. Statement of work is like a breakdown of that proposal into specific deliverables, who's accountable for what. Almost always some sort of NDA, usually coming from you as a large organization, so that the vendor without written consent can't go out and talk about the work that they're doing with you. And then, of course, the terms and conditions and waivers, liability, all that fun stuff. These are all the things that procurement can help you with. All right. Oh, bottom line, we're coming to the end here. Picking your platform is all about due diligence. It can be a lot of fun looking at all these tools and tech that are, that exist and seeing what's possible. But at the end of the day, you're shopping around and you're making a really, really big investment into something that will be critical for your business. So go in with a plan, define your requirements, do all of that pre-work before you start looking at potential tools and platforms. Once you have those requirements defined and they're centered on that experience that you're creating for members, that's when you can start exploring your option. depending on the scope of your program, unlikely that one platform will do everything. So think about what integrated set of tools do we need to use here? And for that, again, you're thinking about the community experience. What are we trying to create for our members? And third, ask lots of questions. There's no dumb questions. There's no bad questions. Clarify, clarify, clarify. Get as much insight and context as you can. And in a large organization, procurement is your friend. Okay. Wrapping up. I am working on something that some of you may recognize because I shared this out 2 years ago through another event. Community Stacks Index. It's an Airtable base with like 400 different tools and platforms categorized, priced, reviewed. I need help. I need feedback. If you would like to help me build this thing out, please let me know. And with that, I'm done. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to throw this back to Clara and Tiffany. Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Great job, Andy. Thank you so much for walking us through this. I feel like you've put together the ultimate framework of how to choose the right platform. The chat, again, there were so many great questions. A lot of shout outs to you, Andy. A lot of shout outs to Glad as well, which is amazing to hear. There were a lot of comments that I really, really love. One of my favorite ones was on big misses in terms of forecasting. So I'm just going to highlight the comment right here. Another comment I really loved was by Steph. When not counting in the maintenance, it's like buying a car and not thinking about the maintenance that's going to happen.
Yes.
And the conversation just continues. So many comments shared. Thank you everyone for participating again so much. Andy, we'll put you on stage and we'll join the roundtable very soon. See you there. All right. Now that it's just me on stage, a couple last things before we jump into our roundtables. Number one, roundtables are for anyone. If you are introverted, extroverted, or somewhere in the middle, please don't be afraid and join. You can keep your camera off, you can be muted, and you can just leverage the chat. That's why our facilitators, our Rebel leaders are there to help you guide the conversation. If you have any questions and want to ask right away, just unmute. Our roundtable hosts are there ready for you. So make sure to get your questions ready. We're going to turn on the roundtables just in a second. We're then going to hop around and say goodbye to everyone. If you want to hop in between the roundtables, you can do that too. And of course, we'll see you all tomorrow at the same time for our 2 upcoming talks from Shauna and Jay. Well, happy roundtabling, everyone, and see you there. All right. Bye, everyone.